Hi there, I'm Paul from Empathy Lab, and I've got great pleasure in introducing this part of the Empathy Superpower Challenge, speaking empathy to power. Now, what do we mean by power? Well, that's basically anyone with the power to change something in the world. It might be somebody that you live with, a brother or a sister, maybe your parents or the people that look after you. It might be somebody at your school, a friend or a teacher. It might be a head teacher, maybe even a local councillor or a politician in the government. Maybe somebody else's government somewhere else in the world. Whoever it is, they've got the power to change things. And what we'd like you to do is to recommend empathetic books that will help them understand the world a little better. You're going to hear from 4 brilliant authors: Nicola Davis, Alex Wheatle, Sita Brahmachari and Anjali Ralph. They're going to be showing you their empathy book recommendations for speaking empathy to power. Enjoy.
Hello, happy Empathy Day. My name's Sita Brahmachari and I am a children's and YA author. Here are some of my stories that you might know. Artichoke Heart, my latest novel, When Shadows Fall, and behind me, When Secrets Set Sail and Where the River Runs Gold. Those are some of my stories. But today it's so great to be with Anjali because we are going to be talking about speaking empathy to power. And the books that we have chosen, not just our own books, but lots of other people's books that have inspired us, that can really help us speak empathy to power and in small and large ways, change the world. Anjali, so lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too, Sita. Hello, darling. Hello, everyone. Hello. Happy Empathy Day. I absolutely love this day. It's one of my favourite days of the year. My name is Anjali Ralph. I am also an author. My books include The Boy at the Back of the Class, The Great Food Bank Heist, which is a Barrington Stokes book as well, and the most recent one, The Line Above the Door.
So speaking empathy to power, what does that mean? It means when you read a book that makes you feel like laughing or crying or transformed by the end of the story, and you think, I just need to do something. I need to make an action. I need to make a small change in the world or a larger change in the world. It means that the process of reading has actually propelled you to do something in the real world to change it. Now,
so what's your first one?
This is The Arrival, and you might think it's a strange book to choose for somebody that works a lot in words, because it's a graphic novel. You might know it. It's by the amazing writer and artist, illustrator, Sean Town. Beautiful images of people having to leave their homelands and start life anew. Every single image evokes empathy and words. So I'm supposed to recommend this book to somebody in power. I recommend this book to everybody, okay? Because everybody can open the pages of this book, whether they can spell, whether they've learned to decode words in any language, and they can read the image and feel empathetic towards the characters.
Well, Sita, I know my power pose was with Ben Davis's brilliant book, The Soup Movement, but guess what I've got in my other hand? Also one of my key recommendations for this amazing day.
Shall we be on screen together?
To our power pose. And I remember being really struck by this book because in my family, especially with my younger brother, so he's not a chapter book reader, but he loves anything to do with imagery, and especially graphic novels like this. And there isn't a single word in here. There's not a single word. Everything is spoken through images. And I think when it comes to, and I know, Sita, you will have seen this for yourself, when it comes to refugees in particular, it is a wordless crisis almost. There are words that can't be found for what people have gone through. There are silences that can't be bridged because of language difficulties. So it's such a beautiful book to bring forward something that is happening right now in the world, in so many parts of the world, and do it in a way that, as you said, speaks through images. And I agree with you, this should be read by absolutely everyone. And that includes from the highest powers that be to everyone in school. So my superpower pose came from this particular book, which features an amazing character called Jordan, who's a bit of a reluctant superhero. Now he wants to be very cool, and I think we can all identify with wanting to be the cool kid in in school, but he's new to the area that he's moved into, and he's very aware that everyone has very cool lunches and he doesn't. So he tries to get rid of his lunches by giving it to a homeless person, and therefore embarks on this amazing journey. But I think homelessness and the idea of what that word means on so many levels, whether it's the refugee crisis or people sleeping rough here in our home country, is something that there's a keen interest to know more about. But it can also be quite hard to bridge the gap between ourselves, those of us lucky enough to have a house above our heads, and those who are having to sleep without even that over their heads. So I absolutely adore this book, and I would recommend it to anybody who is interested in wanting to learn more about what they can do to help their local homeless communities.
Empathy is about making what wasn't visible to you before visible. And I think with homelessness, a lot of homeless people feel that their plight is invisible. And one of the things that people say is that people walk past us as if we don't exist. Yeah. So a book like that makes you see things in you, doesn't it? I am also going to choose a picture book. It is No Longer Alone by Joseph Coelho and Robin Wilson Owen. Now, this is a really special book, and I think that I would like to recommend it to all children, but to also all children who have ever felt like other people talk about them in front of them and judge them. And particularly for adults, teachers and parents who say things like, oh, she's not answering you because she's a bit shy, or he's not doing this because he doesn't like doing this. So the brilliant characters in this story, the brilliant young characters in this story, have the adults talk about them and say, they're a bit shy, they can't really do that. And the child characters say, actually, we're not shy, we just aren't ready to do that yet, or we don't want to do this yet. Now, some of the things in the, and look at these beautiful illustrations.
Wow.
Where
gorgeous.
What you can see in the illustrations and in the beautiful words of Joseph Coelho is the careful superpower of listening between adults and children. Now, sometimes you might think that adults would be better at listening than children, but sometimes, guess what? They're not. And the power of empathy is learnt. And just as, children can learn it with their friends and to learn to support each other, sometimes adults can also forget it. Mm-hmm. So what I love about this story by Joseph Coelho is that it is also a story where the adults learn as much as the children. And I think, one of the things I don't want to do is spoil these books by telling you too much about them. But what I would say is I have been recommending this book to everybody that I know that works with children. I've been recommending it to anybody that has ever felt shy, including me. I would have loved to have found this book when I was young.
Well, Sita, your beautiful selection of You Are No Longer Alone is kind of very similar to The Proudest Blue by Ibtihaj Muhammad and Askay Ali. This is a book that I absolutely adored when it came out, and I've been trying to share with everyone as well. And like No Longer Alone, we are faced with characters who are hearing other people talking about them. In this case, a little girl hearing things being said about her sister, who's just wearing a hijab for the very first time. And I think, like you, if I had seen this book when I was a child at school, it would have just filled me with so much confidence, because I can completely relate to everything that this little girl feels in relation to the whispers, in relation to the rumors, in relation to the things that just aren't true about a very simple act of a religious faith. And I really absolutely would recommend this to everyone.
What we've been doing today, I mean, I'm going to be, looking at those books that you've recommended, and it's passing on the books that have filled you up with empathy and passing them on to another person, and then having that conversation with another person, and then maybe getting together with 3 or 4 people and going, oh, actually maybe we should just see if we can plant a wildflower meadow in our school, or why don't we have bees at our school? Mm-hmm. Or would we like to support a refugee centre locally to us? It's amazing how, I mean, the whole empathy movement has been like planting seeds and seeing them grow, and how many people want to get involved. I mean, the beauty of, I think, the Empathy Lab movement and Empathy Day is that every single person can get involved. So one of the things that we would like you to do as an empathy challenge is do exactly what we have done and find your books, the books that fill you with empathy, the books that you want to share, and share them. Choose who you'd like to share them with, and then share them with them. Perhaps sit and read them together if they're a shorter book, or tell them about these stories and why it's important for them to read these stories. So that is your first empathy act.
And your second empathy act, if you choose to take it on, is not only to share the book that inspires empathy in you with a friend or a teacher or a parent, but also to decide what action you want to take as a result of that story. Maybe you want to take an action together with the person you're sharing that story with, or maybe you've thought of a new thing that you want to do for yourself, for the community around you, for your family, for your loved ones, as a result of reading that book. So number one is sharing that story. Number two, thinking of an action that ties in with that story that you can take on and take forwards for Empathy Day.
Make sure you share what you're doing online as part of the big share, tagging @EmpathyLabUK and #EmpathyDay. Happy
Empathy Day!
Hi everybody, happy Empathy Day. My name is Alex Wheatle, author of books including Cane Warriors, Kimosha of the Caribbean, and Compton Nights, and I'm very happy to be with you.
My name's Nicola Davis, and I'm very happy to be here on Empathy Day. How wonderful. I'm the author of lots of books about nature and the environment, but I've also written things about refugees. The day war came, and this is actually also about refugees, but quite a long time ago, about refugees coming to Wales, King of the Sky. And I also write big fat books too sometimes. This is The Song That Sings Us, which is a kind of environmental thriller. So I'm here today, well, we're both here today, as part of the Empathy Superpower Challenge. And our particular theme today is speaking empathy to power. Well, what does that actually mean? Well, power is people in government, people who make things like government policy and decide all the stuff that influences all our lives. And speaking empathy to those people means telling them how to understand what other people's lives are like. And that's why fiction and stories are so important, because those sorts of people maybe don't have the time to put themselves into other people's shoes. And that's where fiction comes in. This is A House Without Walls by a really amazing author. She's a great heroine of mine, Elizabeth Laird. And it tells the story from the point of view of a young woman, a girl, who has been living in Syria. And when the war in Syria strikes, all sorts of horrible things are going on. And her father, her brother, and she have to flee. Now, there is a wonderful twist to this story, which gives it all sorts of really fascinating depth. The principal character is a twin, and she's been separated from her twin. And her twin has gone to live in America and is living a very, very privileged life. Now, Safia, who's the main character in this story, Safia ends up living in a tent, not able to go to school. Her past and her future feel to her entirely broken. And at this point in her journey as a person who's forced to be a refugee, she's reunited with this very, very privileged twin. And so she sort of sees a reflection of the life that she used to lead, the privileged life that she used to lead, and the person that she used to be. It really helps you to understand what it would be like to be a refugee. And books like this are really, really important, because for people who haven't got time to, or haven't got the ability to imagine what it would be like to be in this situation, really important for them to read things like this so they understand.
I was going to talk about A Christmas Carol and how apt it would be for today, especially with all the cost of living crisis and so on.
Absolutely brilliant.
I remember reading the Christmas Carol way back when I was probably 8 or 9 years old in a children's home, and I think the lessons that you gain from the book are still so much valid today. I mean, I cannot remember the year it was written, but it's got to be what 1840s or 50s, I would imagine. But the lessons that we have, where you have an employer who is mean. He's called Ebenezer Scrooge, isn't he? And he doesn't want to give time off to his employer, and his employer has to deal with a desperate situation at home with a handicapped son and so on. And there's parallels today, isn't there? There's parallels today with people deciding whether to heat their homes or go to the supermarket and do a good shop.
And how depressing is it that
these are serious questions, and exactly how depressing that is. And so the Scrooges of this world are still there. They're still there deciding people's livelihoods and so on, and just keeping all the wealth for themselves. And so I would definitely recommend A Christmas Carol to every politician in the country. And so they should really take it upon themselves to actually go into those communities and see how people are living, just like Charles Dickens did all those years ago. Because I love Dickens and what he did. He actually walked to those places. He walked to those poor houses. He walked to those places of destitution, and he observed, and he wanted to try and make a difference. And that's what he did with his books. I believe that because of his fiction, we had laws like the Poor Law passed, and so on. So that, you know, it didn't improve a great deal, but at least he achieved something. It's about empathy, isn't it? What we're talking about today, it's about empathy for your fellow human being who wants to see children suffering every day. But that's what is happening now. And so absolutely, I would recommend A Christmas Carol, because it tells you in plain, sparing detail of what can happen, what life is like behind those closed doors of a poor house.
It's The Suitcase by an author-illustrator called Chris Naylor Ballesteros. Now, I'm a great advocate of picture books because I write them. And the wonderful, wonderful thing about picture books is that they speak across all ages, across barriers of culture and language, and they present a message in the most powerful, most easily understandable way. One of the books of mine that I mentioned earlier, The Day War Came, actually was given to every member of Parliament who had voted against admitting child refugees to this country. And I think that in some small way, that book, because of its easily understandable, very emotional, clear message, helped some of those MPs to understand the situation of refugees a little bit better. And this, in its way, is also about refugees, about the experience of refugees. Now, this little character here turns up in the world of these three little characters with a mysterious suitcase. And these three have never seen an animal like him before. And they wonder what's in his suitcase. And they're very, very suspicious about the suitcase. So simple though it is, these very clear, very humorous, very endearing illustrations actually show you beautifully some of the attitudes that people have when they're faced with a person who's unfamiliar, who comes from an unfamiliar place, and the suspicion about the things that they might bring with them. That's kind of what fiction, what books are for. They're for people who don't have the imagination to put themselves in somebody else's boots. So you read a story and the story does that. It puts you in somebody else's shoes.
It does. And the only text that I was really passionate about in my school days were quite checkered with the trouble I had, but the only text that caught my imagination was An Inspector Calls, J.B. Priestley. And again, it's showing a reader another life, another experience, another real experience of this poor girl who'd just been used from pillar to post and taken advantage of, and her life, her ambitions not really cared for. And this rich family, they just basically take no attention or care or have any care of duty about her. And I think that's a parallel for today, because we are seeing people slip through the gaps in society today. And so those old texts, you know, they're still very relevant today. We can still learn so many lessons from them today. And with my writing, I try to kind of engage that narrative in my fiction. I'm trying to talk about the similar themes and so on, you know, people who leave from care and so on. And so it's definitely something to be gained and learned, and where we can gain empathy from reading those classical texts. And I just wish that those who had the power, all of them, could just stop this squabbling and actually see what is really going on in today's society. You know, not just visit a food bank just for a photo op, but to actually try and get to know those families who are struggling. And there is fiction available today that acknowledges that. So this is why reading books can build so much empathy if only the right people read those texts. It will, you know, I believe our world would be so much better once they actually realize and see for themselves the harm that is taking place out there. Okay, now it's your turn. What books would you recommend for empathy? What would you choose? What would you select for people to learn from?
Share what you're doing online as part of the big share, and the tag that you're looking for is @EmpathyLabUK or #EmpathyDay. We really want to see what you're up to.